So now that the NFC and AFC championship games are over, and we know that it's going to be the Carolina Panthers taking on the Denver Broncos in Super Bowl 50, and we're in the midst of the middle of Senior Bowl week, I figured it's a perfect time to come on here and give you an updated 2016 NFL mock draft. 3-round edition this time, as promised. You can check out all 3 rounds worth of picks in the comments section, or description box down below, excuse me, and you can give me your thoughts and opinions on the picks for your team, other teams, certain scenarios I have playing out, players I have rising, players I have falling. You let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Now, in terms of this particular mock draft, let's just go ahead and fire through some of the picks. I've still got Tennessee taking Laremy Tunsil, number 1. I don't know that he's my number 1 player on the board at this point, but he's probably going to end up being a top 3 or top 5 player in this draft for me. I think it makes a lot of sense for the Tennessee Titans. I've heard some scuttlebutt, and I've seen some people talk about the fact that the Titans might want to trade down and go after somebody like Jalen Ramsey. And here's my thing. For that type of philosophy, I understand you're in a position where you want to try and accumulate additional picks if you're the Titans. And I don't begrudge you for that. However, I don't think there's a real clear-cut number 1 player in this draft class. And as a result, if you've got your dude at number 1 and you don't get your socks rocked or socks knocked off to trade back a few picks, then just take your dude. Just take Jalen Ramsey, number 1. And ultimately hope that he proves you right and validates you for taking him in that spot. You know, safety is a very important position in today's NFL, and frankly, a lot of NFL organizations haven't caught up to that reality. So why not be one of those teams that does catch up to that reality? I mean, I wouldn't knock them a ton, even though I don't think it's the best fit. I don't think it makes the most sense for them. I could understand it and I could get it. But at the end of the day, if that's your dude, then just take him. Don't try to get cute. Don't try and peel back to 6 or 7, and then somebody takes him at 5, and you look like a jackass. You know, I'm just saying. I've got the Browns taking Carson Wentz at number 2, and no, this is not a Johnny-come-lately pick. If you've been watching me and following me for a while on Twitter or on here, you know I've been very high on Carson Wentz for an extended period of time, for a few months now. I even tweeted a few months ago when it wasn't even trendy to do so, that to me Carson Wentz was the number 1 quarterback in the 2016 NFL Draft. I stand by that. I firmly believe it. And at the end of the day, I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up being the first quarterback taken. And what better contrast in quarterbacks to go from Johnny Manziel to freaking Carson Wentz? One guy who's a complete mess off the field to a guy that is great off of the field. You know, I know there will be questions about small school competition. There will be questions about other things. Some people might get aggravated by his love of God or everything like that. But the fact of the matter is he's got the best physical skill set of any quarterback in this draft class. And I'd be stunned at this moment if, when all is said and done, he doesn't end up being the number 2 overall pick. And frankly, I wouldn't be surprised really at the end of the day, if it comes to April 28th, right around there in day 1 of the NFL draft, if somebody's not trying to peel up to number 1 overall to go get Carson Wentz. Yeah, I said it. 3rd, I got DeForest Buckner from Oregon going to the Chargers. They have needs all over the place on both sides of the ball, frankly. I think Buckner makes a ton of sense for them in their 3-4 defense. I think he's the most natural and best fit as a 3-4 defensive end in this entire draft. I mean, he just makes a lot of sense to me. I know some Charger fans might want a wide receiver here. I don't think a receiver is worth taking 3rd overall. I know some Chargers fans might want somebody like a Jalen Ramsey because they're allowing Eric Weddle to leave via free agency. Again, I don't know that Jalen Ramsey's worth a 3rd overall pick. He might be worth a top 10 pick, but I don't know if he's worth a 3rd overall pick. 4th, I've still got the Cowboys taking a quarterback. This time it's Jared Goff from California. Look, I know a lot of Cowboy fans are going to sit there and say, you can't pass up on Myles Jack. You can't pass up on Joey Bosa. You can't pass up on Jalen Ramsey. And some of you might even want to Ezekiel or Laquan Treadwell here. Look, there are a lot of directions the Cowboys could go. And if they ended up with any of those players, I'm probably not going to knock them. But I would really credit them for having the courage and the long-term vision to take the right player. And the right player is a quarterback that has long-term starting potential for them. I'm going to stand by that. I've got the Jaguars taking Myles Jack at number 5. Jalen Ramsey will probably be a popular pick here. I've been talking about him a lot in this mock. But I look at Myles Jack, and, you know, for Gus Bradley, that defense needs to show some significant improvement in 2016, and getting his version of a Bobby Wagner would go a long way to helping that. And I look at him, I just think Myles Jack might be a little bit of a better fit for that defense than Jalen Ramsey would be, and I think Myles Jack might be the dude. A lot of people foolishly, again, believe that he tore his ACL. He did not. He tore his meniscus, which is not as serious of a knee injury. You know, Jack will probably work out come the damn combine. I wouldn't be surprised, you know, if he knocks a lot of people's socks off. I'll be honest, at 6, I don't know what to think with the Ravens at this point. Jalen Ramsey, again, could make a ton of sense here. An edge rusher, if there was one, would make a lot of sense here, although I don't think there's a 3-4 outside linebacker worth taking number 6 at this particular moment. Joey Bosa would seem to fit the profile of somebody that a guy like Ozzie Newsome would take, but again, I have concerns about his fit in a 3-4 defense, either as an edge rusher or as a 3-4 defensive end. So maybe he would go in the direction of somebody like an Ashawn Robinson, a guy with some physical talent, with some upside from a big-name program. Personally, I know I've seen a lot of mocks and a lot of people talking about them taking somebody like a Ronnie Stanley. I don't know, and I frankly don't know what the fuck to think at this point. Some people point to Laquan Treadwell. I don't know. In no way, shape, or form do I think Ashawn Robinson is anywhere close to a number 6 overall pick in this draft. I don't think he's even worth the number 6 overall pick in the 2nd round. I'm not even sure he's worth the number 6 overall pick in the damn 3rd round. This is not a great draft, so that tells you something about how I feel about Ashawn Robinson and its prospect. But, sometimes the stupidity of the draft process, some of these guys, teams fall in love with that athletic upside, and they ignore the fact that this guy's probably only the 5th or 6th best player in that Alabama front 7 in 2015. And boom, I just said it, dropped the mic. Number 7, Ronnie Stanley makes a lot of sense at this point because the top 2 quarterbacks are off the board. He would fit really well in Chip Kelly's offensive system with his athleticism. I think that's a natural fit there for all parties involved. The Dolphins at number 8 with Joey Bosa. Some Dolphins fans will be like, hey, you don't need a defensive end. You need Jalen Ramsey. They need a linebacker like Reggie Ragland or Jalen Smith. They need an offensive tackle. Well, you're right on all of that. But they also need defensive line help. These motherfuckers finished 5-11 last year. 5-11. They're picking 8th. They have needs all over the damn place. You take the best available player at a position in need, period. And, in this particular case, you could maybe argue, I don't know that I fully agree, that Bosa would be the absolute best player on the board, but I most certainly wouldn't knock him a lot for this pick because Cameron Wake is in his 30s coming off of an Achilles injury. Olivier Vernon is a free agent. He may get franchised. He may not. Either way, even if he does get franchised, they could use more pass rush on that line with Vernon and Ndamukong Suh. And a guy like Bosa, again, makes a lot of sense, and he can mask some of the deficiencies, help mask some of those deficiencies, I should say, in your linebacking corner in particular, in your secondary at the corner position in particular. I've got the Ramsey boy going number 9 to Tennessee. Yes, Jalen Ramsey. I've talked about him so much in this mock draft, I didn't even realize it. But Ramsey, it's funny, the Bucs would sit there and fire their defensive-minded head coach to promote their offensive coordinator from within, only to now decide that they finally want to start investing on the defensive side of the ball. That would figure. That makes a lot of sense. I've still got Ezekiel Elliott going number 10 to the Giants. It's just the way this just makes too much sense to me on so many different levels. Clearly best player available on the board at that particular point in time and would fill a huge area of need for the Giants. I've got the Bears still picking Jaylon Smith, number 11 from Notre Dame. They could go offensive tackle here with somebody like a Taylor Decker. If a Jalen Ramsey would there, they want playmakers on the defensive side of the ball. I'd fully expect that he would certainly be in play. A guy like Reggie Ragland may end up making sense for them because the Bears want somebody that could contribute immediately where Jalen Smith, might end up having to redshirt most, if not all, of 2016. And does this team really want to have a second straight year where they've redshirted a first-round pick? I don't know that they do. But if you're trying to build a contender and a consistent contender and a long-term contender, at the end of the day, to me, Jalen Smith is a little bit better football player than Reggie Ragland. And Jalen Smith at this particular point in time would clearly be the best value on the board. Knee injury, no knee injury, doesn't matter. Because otherwise, if he didn't have the knee injury, you probably have no chance at Jalen Smith. With the knee injury, you've got a chance at him, and I think the Bears can't blink if this is the way it plays out. There's no Carson Wentz or even Jared Goff, so of course I'm crying inside. Defensively, Vic Fangio enjoyed a lot of success in San Francisco with guys like Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman manning the middle. The Bears' biggest weakness on defense, beyond question, I think, was their inside linebacker position. Jalen Smith makes all the sense in the world to me. Now, in terms of this whole process, we're talking about the Senior Bowl, and we're talking about players and helping or hurting their draft stock. I'll just talk this time about some of the players I think will help their draft stock throughout the Senior Bowl process. Carson Wentz, talked about him a lot. I think once you get out of the Senior Bowl, and especially once you get done with the Combine, there will be no question he'll put everybody else in the dust. He'll be the clear-cut #1 quarterback prospect in this draft class. At running back, I look at guys like Kenneth Dixon from Louisiana Tech. I think people underrate him. He is a really good back, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him sneak into the tail-end portion of round 2. Kenyon Drake from Alabama, a guy that I think could sneak into the late portion of day 2 of the draft, at least as a change of pace back, maybe somebody that has some starting running back potential. His biggest problem has been health. But when you look at him, you can envision this guy being a playmaker to a certain degree at the NFL level. You could see him having some type of impact as a back, even if it's as a change of pace back. Yes, he played behind T.J. Yeldon. Yes, he played behind Derrick Henry, and he was hurt some. But when he played, he showed some flashes, and he's a guy that could do something in the passing game. He's a guy, like I said, that could be a nice lightning to somebody's thunder. You take a chance on those guys at the end of day number 2, in my opinion. Wide receiver I expect to help himself the most in this Senior Bowl process is going to be Braxton Miller from Ohio State. I think it would be a major upset or coup at this point in time by the time the 2016 NFL Draft comes around if Braxton Miller isn't taken in the first 50 picks, if not the first 40 picks, if not the first 30 picks. Boom, I said it. Leonte Carew, the wide receiver from Rutgers. Here's a guy talent-wise, has a lot of it. Also has a lot of questions, especially off the field, especially with the domestic violence allegation. I believe it ended up getting dismissed, but believe me, teams are going to be researching. There's going to be a lot of questions. And the most important part for him in this whole Senior Bowl process, the Combine process, the whole draft process is going to be the off-the-field stuff. It's going to be the interview room. Because if he interviews well and people like the personality, he'll probably end up being a second-round pick. If they don't, he'll be a 4th, 5th-round pick. Then offensive lineman, I'll look at Willie Beavers from Western Michigan. Sometimes it's trendy to fall in love with these smaller school prospects and focus on certain traits, and he might be the guy that most likely benefits. I would have said somebody like a Joe Haig from North Dakota State, but I think he ended up getting hurt and having to pull out of the Senior Bowl week. So as a result, somebody like Beavers can capitalize on that. On the defensive side of the ball, I look at defensive linemen. I'll start off with Vernon Butler from Louisiana Tech. You'll see here I've got him going 16th to Detroit. Part of the reason is they have needs on the defensive line. They have needs on the offensive line. I expect him to go in one of those 2 directions in the first round of the draft. In this case, though, the top 3 offensive tackles are gone. As a result, they go to the defensive side of the board, and Vernon Butler, you don't know a lot about him because he played at Louisiana Tech, but this guy is really, really fucking good. I promise you. Carl Nassib from Penn State, you'll see it. Once again, I've got him going 31st to the Carolina Panthers. There might be some questions about his lower body strength, whether or not he can really be somebody that will be able to generate any type of bull rush. Can he really play a 3-4 defensive end? Is he really a fit for a 4-3 defensive end? Is he better as a 3-4 outside linebacker? Look, all I know is this dude can smoke people off the edge, and this dude can generate some heat. He had at least 1 sack in every game that he played in 2015. He led the nation in sacks, and I think he even missed a couple of games. 15.5 sacks. And this dude's just explosive off the edge. Fucking explosive. And I wouldn't be surprised to see more people start to put him in the bottom portion of their round 1 mocks as time goes along, especially after the Senior Bowl week. Bronson Kafusi, the defensive end from BYU, is a really, really good defensive line class, but not a ton of really good natural 4-3 defensive end prospects. And I look at Bronson Kafusi at 6'7", maybe 265 pounds, and he has that size profile to be able to play at that 4-3 defensive end position. So I think at the end of the day, he ends up stamping himself as a potential round 2 prospect with what he does at the Senior Bowl. In terms of linebackers, I look at an edge rusher like Kyler Fackrell from Utah State. It's not a great class for 3-4 outside linebackers. So that means that there is an opportunity, a void there. Somebody could step in, and Fackrell could be that dude. I look at Reggie Ragland as well, the linebacker from Alabama. With Jalen Smith's knee injury, it opened up the potential for Reggie Ragland to be the second inside linebacker taken in this draft. It opened up the potential for Reggie Ragland to potentially go even as high as the top 10, something I didn't think was possible a couple of months ago. Here's a guy that, if nothing else, throughout the Senior Bowl process, if he can show himself to be capable at 255, 260 pounds of being a 3-down inside linebacker at the NFL level, he's going to absolutely cement his floor as a top 20 pick, and he might even push his ceiling up to a top 7 or 8 pick in this draft. I mean that. So, and then I look at a corner. It's not a great corner class to me, especially once Desmond King decided to go back to school. I look at DeAndre Hall from Northern Iowa. Here's a guy that plays in a program that is better than a lot of people give it credit for because it's on a smaller level. Remember the last time I was really big on a Northern Iowa prospect? It was the 2015 draft. His name was David Johnson. The Cardinals took him in the 3rd round, and you saw what he did. I don't quite have those same type of feelings for DeAndre Hall, but teams are going to love his physicality. They're going to be enamored with his potential upside, especially in a press man cover system. So watch out for him as being a guy who you hear his name rise in day number 2. Again, that's my 3-round mock draft. All the picks in the description box. Let me know your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. Make sure you check out my individual scouting reports as well.